I'm Heather Bagnall, and I am a delegate for District 33 in Anne Arundel County. So for anyone who doesn't know sort of what our local government looks like, if you think about the federal government, and we have the president, we have the Senate, and we have the House of Representatives. In Maryland, we have a similar system where we have the governor, we have the Senate, and we have the House of Delegates. And I have the great honor of being a public servant in the House of Delegates. I started out I actually ran for office in 2018 after I had concerns, with the 2016 election, and I looked around out of concern for my community and thought, well, what can I do? And I decided that I wanted to run for state office and see if I could work to make things a little better for my community, and really contribute in that way. District 33, for anyone who doesn't know, encompasses the Broadneck Peninsula up through the Route 2 corridor through Severna Park and up to the edge of Glen Burnie, and down the Route 3 corridor through Odenton, Gambrills, Crofton, Davidsonville. It's also Crownsville, a little bit of Reba. And so we are the largest district geographically in Anne Arundel County. Running for office isn't, it's interesting because I never set out to be a career politician. Politics is obviously a career for many folks, and there are multiple paths to get there. My path was very different than some folks, because I really did view it as a calling rather than as a career, and it was a huge diversion from the career in which I had spent 30 years of my life. My background is in the performing arts. So I'm an artist, an arts educator. I worked in arts administration and nonprofits for many, many years. And I jokingly said when I was running for office that arts nonprofits prepare you for government, because you have to do everything with almost nothing, and you have to figure out how to pay for it. And good governance is not terribly different, because so much of what you bring to your office is what you have collected from your life. So there are no educational requirements per se for running for office, but there are things that will help prepare you for it. In office, you find a lot of lawyers. You have a lot of physicians. You have a lot of people that are experts in a particular field in their life. And obviously my expertise was in performing arts, which gives you a different view through which you look at legislation. When I ran for office, one of the things that was very important to me once I took office was looking at legislation through a multifaceted lens, through an equity lens, and having a background in theater, particularly as a director and a producer and a playwright, because I am all of those things. You have to have sort of a big picture view of what you want. When you are a director, when you're the playwright, you have to have the overarching vision, and then you have to figure out how all those pieces fit into that vision. And when you're looking at legislation, it's very much the same thing, because you want to look at how that legislation affects multiple communities, because it's going to impact them differently. And you want to look at it through every lens that you can, because it also helps you avoid what we call unintended consequences, which is when it has an adverse impact on a particular community that you didn't anticipate. So I feel like that's a big part of my job is looking at legislation through that equity lens and trying to anticipate those unintended consequences, and also trying to bring together all the components to have the best, most comprehensive, most impactful legislation. But legislation is only a small piece of what we actually do, because in Maryland, we have a 90-day session, which is when we are actually in Annapolis, where legislators from all over the state come to Annapolis, and we actually work on the budget and we work on legislation for the year. But outside of those 90 days, we also do what's called constituent services. And I think that's probably my favorite part of my job, because it is where we are tackling those things that our constituents haven't been able to resolve. And something that I have found since I've been in office is that most people, they don't reach out until they haven't figured out what else to do. They sort of try everything that they can, and then when they run out of ideas, when they run out of options, then they call me. And often I don't necessarily have the answer. Again, your legislators are coming from all kinds of different backgrounds. But what we do have is we have our own liaisons. We have our own contacts. And much like when I was in arts administration, where my role was to put all the pieces together to find the best artist that I could, and match them with the right venue, and match them with the right audience, and find those grant resources to put that whole package together. That's very much what constituent services is like, because often it's somebody coming to you with an issue, and you may not have the solution, but you have a contact in the Maryland Department of the Environment, or a contact in the Maryland Health Department, or the Department of Aging, and you put those pieces together, you put those people together, and it helps get that resolution. And I have been very fortunate, and with the pandemic, obviously those constituent services became so much more essential than they've ever been, because the issues that people needed resolved were of much higher stakes. When I first started in this office, for instance, I worked to get the Anne Arundel County Food Bank a new roof. And again, it was that strange puzzle of nobody said it could be done, because they didn't have a long-term lease. And in order to get the funding, they had to have a long-term lease, or they had to own the property. So I went to the health department, who actually oversaw the property, and said, will you give them a long-term lease? And then once they got that, then we were able to get the funding. But because we got that funding and the lease, there was another organization that was able to do a matching grant. And so, we were able to resolve this sort of unresolvable issue. And then, of course, a year and a half later, we were in a pandemic, when that resource became so incredibly essential. And it was saving it was just a matter of putting all the right people and all the right pieces together. And then knowing that we had this resource in this incredibly challenging time was just really, really gratifying. And it's the reason that I wanted, that I ran for office, that I took this job. And if you're thinking about running for office, there, obviously, as I said, there aren't educational requirements per se, but there are things that you can do to prepare yourself. Obviously, any sort of leadership training is of great value. But I didn't, as I said, I didn't follow that career path. In fact, I filed for office, and then I self-trained, because there are a number of different ways that you can train for office. You can do very sort of traditional trainings, like for women, they have programs such as Emerge, which are specifically for training, training women to run for office. I worked with Emily's List, which is another organization. I worked with a national candidate training program. I worked with a couple of in-person trainings that you came and trained for the weekend. I did a lot of online training. While I was at my other job, I'd have my earphones on and I'd be filing, working in the files and listening to trainings and doing my homework and taking my notes and making sure that I really understood what that campaign track looked like. But no matter how much you train to run for office, it still doesn't necessarily train you to be in office. And I think that's the challenge, because there is no handbook for office. I mean, the office is kind of what you make it. And when I first was in office, it was funny because we did have an orientation, and the orientation was really sort of the nuts and bolts of the building of, so the rules of engagement, if you will, but not really about what we do. And I was new and my staff was new. And in some ways, I think that was a little bit of an advantage because we made the job what we wanted it to be. So much of this is again, it's a part-time job, but for me, it's a full-time job, particularly because we have been in a pandemic. We have been in an economic crisis. We've had, multiple crises that we've been working on. And so much of this is just sort of figuring it out because as I'm sure you're aware, government isn't designed for, it's not designed to be fast. And that's by design. You don't want to be able to write laws quickly. You don't want to be able to unwrite laws quickly because, they need consideration. You need to make sure that what you're doing is thoughtful. But in a crisis, government has to figure out how to pivot. And being that my background was in the arts, which is a field that is constantly changing, I was actually well positioned for just sort of taking those risks and when I didn't have an answer, figuring it out. And the great thing about that job is that, as I said, when we were talking about the constituent services, is how I may not have the answers, but I have the contacts. When you have these really big crises, that's also when you have those contacts. And that's when you start getting on the phone and saying, we have to figure this out. Who do I know that knows more? And I think one of the marks of a great leader is surrounding yourself with people that know more than you do. Surrounding yourself with experts in their fields. And as I said, with the General Assembly, you have a lot of experts in a lot of different fields. So you have access to a lot of resources. And when we talk about what are the various jobs in this field, it's pretty extensive. A 90-day session is it's a process of committees. I'm on the Health and Government Operations Committee. There's Environment Transportation, there's Ways and Means, there's Economic Matters, there's Appropriations. Each one has sort of their area of specificity, their area of focus. And then we work in a committee system where we look at legislation first through subcommittee, then through full committee, then it goes to the floor. So before any law goes into effect, there are multiple hearings. There are multiple eyes on that piece of legislation, and we're trying to sort of dissect it and and get the most impactful product to the floor for a final vote. In terms of, as I said, I think the constituent services is the most satisfying. The most challenging, I would have to say, and again, this is through the lens of the pandemic. So you want to take some of this with a grain of salt because obviously we are in unusual times. But I think the most challenging has been seeing folks struggling and feeling like I was in a position to help and couldn't, because there are challenges that are sort of beyond this office. And part of my role throughout this became not just legislator, but friend and mentor and therapist. And sometimes my role was simply to be a compassionate voice on the other end of the phone after somebody had spent hours and hours and hours on the phone trying to get through to unemployment and they couldn't get someone. And just that call back from a person from my office saying, I know that this is a challenge, this is where we are, this is what I've done. Just that phone call was often, sort of, it was a bit of humanity in a very inhumane moment. In terms of how my job has affected my lifestyle, it's become very different. Before I ran for office, I was not only a performer, but I was a touring artist. So I spent about half the year in Maryland, about a third of the year in New York, and about a third of the year touring nationally and internationally. And since taking this job, since running for office and taking office, I really curtailed a lot of my touring because I really wanted to be here 100% for my constituency. But what it has also allowed me to do is really raise the profile of artists, of career artists, because I think sometimes artists just sort of run under the radar, and there isn't a recognition that arts is a valid and thriving career. And when I ran for office, I was told three things. Don't tell people you're an artist. Don't talk about public housing, affordable housing, and don't talk about public transportation. And so, of course, I ran as an artist on affordable housing and public transportation. But the reason I did that was because when people said to me, don't run as an artist because people won't take you seriously, I took umbrage at that because I have spent 30 years as an artist, as a performer, as an arts administrator, director of a program, as well as director of theatrical productions, producer, playwright, mentor. And I even created a program called Cultivating Kindness Through Theater Arts, which was part of the PVA program here in Anne Arundel County. And it teaches team building, communication, and empathy and compassion through theater games. And when people said to me, like, don't run as an artist, I was really bothered by that because I just thought, well, what kind of a message does that send to all of the other artists I've worked with for the last 30 years? And what kind of a message does that send to the students who I have taught over the years and the people that I have mentored over the years? So I really leaned into that. And since being in office, it has actually given me the ability to lean into it even more. And people who maybe had a background in the arts or had that, as an early on career and pivoted, um, have really sort of come out of the shadows and wanted to tell their stories about the significance that arts had in their life or has in their life. And during the pandemic, that became even more so because, of course, performing arts essentially shut down. And I don't think there was a recognition of how much of a financial engine the arts really are. So, being in office has actually given me that, has been gratifying in the sense that I'm able to deliver for constituents, but also gratifying because I've really been able to elevate the profile of something that has been so meaningful in my life, which is the arts, and really raise the profile of it, and even talk to the people that lobby for the arts about being more forthright and sort of demanding about the essential nature of the arts, that it's not something frivolous, it's not something pigeonholed, that it really is a bridge across disciplines, and it is integral to our humanity. Obviously, one of the questions was how is the economy affecting this industry? I think I've been pretty forthright in how it's affecting it. The economy has been brutal on the arts, but it's also been brutal on government, and not brutal in the sense financially, because we have actually done better than we expected. Maryland has been more resilient than sort of the early projections anticipated. We also have been very fortunate to have really great federal partners, and something that happened during the pandemic was that sort of the walls, the siloing of government fell away, which was exciting for me. It was sort of like, if you're looking for silver linings in all of this, that was a huge silver lining for me, because it's been something that I've been striving for since I took office. I don't like siloing. I think that you don't get the best product when everybody's operating in silos, because then they're only seeing things through their own filters. And during the pandemic, when we really had to pivot, all of a sudden, I'm having meetings with our federal partners, our congressmen, and with our state partners and our county partners and our local partners, and the community aspect of government really solidified. And I think that is extremely healthy for good governance. I think that's extremely healthy for the people that we represent. In terms of changes in government, I think the changes are pretty profound. We're seeing a much more sort of diverse bench of people that are running for office, not just in terms of racial equity, but we're seeing a lot more women who are running for office. We're seeing a lot more people from a much more diverse socioeconomic strata running for office, and we're seeing people running for office from much more diverse backgrounds. And again, I think that's very, very healthy for government, because we want a government that looks like us, but we also want a government that speaks to all of these different backgrounds, because we want to see ourselves represented in our representatives. So seeing that change in government and knowing that I am a small part of that change is very significant to me. Even if I am a footnote in history, I will always know that I was here in this this pivotal moment in our state and in our nation. And I think if that is where you come from, if you sort of come from this humble place of meeting people where they are, if you are somebody who likes to listen, who likes to problem solve, who wants to be a compassionate voice for other people, then this is a great career. This is a great career to pursue.